those were a couple of the important ones I liked.
For you folks just coming in, we're just finishing up our first meeting before we start the second meeting, and we're talking about the school board convention that we attended this week. So we'll be finishing that up in a couple minutes. We have a couple more people to go before we start our next meeting, just so there's no confusion. Mike or Jim, who would like to go?
I wasn't sure if I was going to do this or anyways, but.
Yeah, that one you're gonna talk about later.
Okay, all right, so I'll hold off on that section, but, this is actually my first time I've ever been able to go, to my, job and so forth. And so this in, January always, but I have to say that the particular one that I got to go over, was the, yeah, it's just about, having, be prepared for cybersecurity attacks and so forth, obviously, saw them after I sat down, and it was good just to be able to kind of touch base about, Alpha, and they had a huge attack where, not only their students, but the staff, all of their data was thrown onto the dark web, and, thereafter, and the fact that they didn't really have a plan, on how to deal with that. So they know who to contact first, they didn't know what they should be doing in order to deal with their attack. So that was kind of eye-opening. Discuss it with Tom a little bit, we'll do that more at our next technology session. So the other one was, the other big one that I really enjoyed was
Mr. Bala.
I have guys, to attend 8 of them breakout mini sessions and of course a few general sessions, which I thought were all very good. The speakers were great. I'll just highlight a couple of them. I think one of them that caught my attention was put on, and it was called Pharmacy Benefit Trends. And I know that we're self-funded, and that's a big thing that's going on in our schools in terms of how expensive pharmacy costs are, especially the specialty medications. They said that one dose of the specialty medication can cost over $35,000. And how can we best control those kind of costs? So they shared about the fact that there are actually about 30 different specialty pharmacies that sell all the same drugs. And right now, pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, aren't required to shop to get the best pricing. They might align themselves with certain specialty companies, and they talked about the need for transparency in some of those contracts with the PBMs, like a school district would have with the PBMs, and to ensure that there's no hidden costs or to basically give the district the best chance of getting the best prices for these medicines. So I'll share that with Brian, and hopefully that will be something that could maybe help contain some of those higher costs. The other thing that I went to was several sections on the board's role in financial oversight and the new the monthly financial scorecard for our district, and that was from CISA 5 that actually put that on, and they talked about a suggestion to provide the board with a scorecard which has an overview every month, which would consist of budget information, regulations and reporting that is required to be provided to DPI and the deadlines, making sure that those have all been met, and then also some information on payrolls and bank accounts and grant reportings. And they said that that would be like Title I, Title II, things like that, so that the board can see that just as a routine thing. And so that might be something that I will pass on to Brian as well, and see if that's something that we could start getting as a board. And the last thing was, and it was again through Milwaukee School District, who put on, and they called it the 30,000-foot view of 4 leadership questions to focus on, and it uses this Baldridge Excellence Builder. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, Dr. Garvin, but I thought that was very excellent in terms of how we look at questions from a high level on how the operations and the businesses of the school district is moving forward. Obviously, our business is to educate our kids, and so I think that's a focus that, if we haven't looked at before, that might be worth incorporating some of those things into that. So I could talk about more, but we'll pass on to you.
Okay, well, I'll just take a quick moment to share some key takeaways. One of the most encouraging themes was the significant progress being made around artificial intelligence, both in how it's being used in schools and, just as important, how it's being governed through thoughtful policy. AI is not something that's coming someday, it's here. Districts that are being successful are the ones being intentional of how, when, and why it's used. That connected closely to another session I attended on the importance of having a technology-focused person in a director-level role. Whether that individual is a classroom teacher with strong instructional technology experience or a more traditional introverted tech expert, he's smiling, the key point was this: without someone consistently at the table to guide decision-making, communication, and implementation, districts risk stagnation. With technology changing so rapidly, we cannot fully realize the benefits of AI or protect against its risks without that expertise helping shape our direction and how we communicate expectations to staff and students. I also attended an outstanding STEM session that really stood out to me. The program highlighted was almost fully grant funded and intentionally inclusive, because not all students can participate in extracurricular clubs, but all students deserve access to meaningful hands-on learning. In Lodi, students in these STEM classes are literally manufacturing their own products, marketing them and selling them, and learning real-world skills embedded directly into their school day. That idea directly ties back to another one about technology that was focused on in our technology, one about CTE partnerships. One example shared creating internships connected to the CTE program. This resonated with me because our own principal of the high school mentioned a similar thing to me in the past. In that district, students are responsible for Chromebook repairs, and as a result, they saved the district approximately $30,000 last year. That's authentic learning and fiscal responsibility. I also attended a strong leadership session, which I found exciting because I saw many parallels between what was discussed and the leadership strengths we already have within our district. I saw something called an accountability chart, which if you sit in Dr. Garvin's office, it's up right on her board, and now I know exactly what it's used for. Finally, my favorite session was a student-led discussion from the Platteville School District focused on creating a We Belong culture. They shared how intentional efforts to build belonging directly increase student attendance and student learning. Hearing students articulate that impact firsthand was powerful and reinforced how critical school culture is to student success. I'd be happy to go into greater detail at any of these sessions if anybody is interested, but these are my highlights. And with that, I believe it is time for us to move on to our regular meeting. So I would like to call this, are we on, Tom? Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:05. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Amanda, roll call.
Director Capella?
Here.
Director Nat?
Here.
Director Riccio? Here. Director Durr?
Here.
Director Scoglin? Here. Director Galuski?
Here.
Director Johnson?
Here.
Here for.
Okay, I will accept approval of the agenda. Second. Motion made by Rhonda Riccio, seconded by Alyssa Scoglin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Mike Johnson, seconded by Chris Galuski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to legislative issues and updates. I believe there are a couple of them. Mike? Just make sure, speak real into the microphone. I know we've had some requests coming in that they want to be able to hear you.
Gotcha, thank you. I will try to keep, speak up. Normally I just yell really loud, because So yeah, while I was at Waspy on Thursday, I ran into someone who is with the Association for Equity and Funding, and he kind of opened my eyes a bit. I know we have been going after special ed funding, and by all means that is important, but he very wisely pointed out to me that if we had equity and funding throughout the state, in the first place, we would all votes would rise back up to an equal amount first, and then we can work on the special ed funding afterwards. And the change in the amount of money that you would get would be considerably different. Just in terms of one little worksheet that you pointed out, we would almost double our funding for a year. So that would, it went from like 1.39 million to 2.7 million in a year, with what they're looking to do. They are possibly going to be suing the state over it, and we could choose to get on board with that or not. We are one of the lower funded school districts, just like South Milwaukee is. Almost all of the South Shore districts are, with the exception of St. Francis, I believe. They were, I believe, in the green. So there's a color-coded sheet if you want to go to their website, but it's red, yellow, green. Red means you're severely underfunded, yellow meaning that you're underfunded, and then green meaning you're fine. So that same size districts would, the amount of funding that they would get, on average, they could, so I can't remember the names of those districts right off the top of my head, but one district with the same number of students, same shape, same distance to and from schools, was able to spend $21,000 per student, and like that's not including like local stuff. That was just from the state. Whereas the district almost right next door was only getting 11,000. We get about 11,000 if I remember correctly. Still. Yeah. And so, I mean, that kind of goes to show 20, I mean, think about it, if we had $21,000 per student, we would not have had to go to referendum, I don't believe, or at least would have been very close. So, this is a statewide issue, and I would really like it if we could actually get that message out to more and more people. I mean, millions of dollars we don't get that other districts do. So if you hear that certain districts are doing better than others, that would be why.
Okay. Jim, I know you have an update.
Yes, thank you. I was attending the meeting for the South Wisconsin School Alliance on January 13th, and the agenda did include some of the legislative updates. We did talk about some of the bills that will probably never get into law because of the timing of where the legislature is. They're only in session for several more weeks, and they're trying to, I think, push some of these bills off to the side. The one that is my personal goat is the rehired annuitants bill, which is certainly stuck, and that's, you know, on behalf of the board, I sent information to our legislators, imploring them to try to give us that flexibility to hire annuitants that would be able to be of help to our district in terms of either a substitute or to fill in positions that are hard to fill. But SWSA is saying that all the efforts so far have not resulted in anything positive, that they're just kind of saying they're waiting for an amendment and that they don't know what's going to happen, and it's just stuck in rut. So that's personally frustrating for me. They did, like Director Johnson said, on the school funding, they talked about how we used to be 11th in the nation, and we're dropping down to 26th in the funding for schools, public schools. And also, obviously, the state test scores are dropping, and that's a sign that we're not being able to give enough resources to meet the students' needs. So there are hopes that as we get closer to summertime, that some things may pick up, but I'm not holding my breath. And again, it's a little bit frustrating, but welcome to politics. So, I'll stop with that.
John, I was thinking maybe you would have an update about, I know at the delegate, at the WASB convention, there was a school district that stood alone and asked for, something. I know we just got an email about it, I didn't have a chance to really go through it, but I'm assuming that you would have an update on that, right?
I believe that was the emergency resolution, possibly. So emergency resolution is one that was received by WASB after the deadline of September 1st, I believe. So that one was in regards to creating a subsection 2.31, funding for children with disabilities. It was proposed to make it more pronounced on the disability funding needs. That passed the assembly, 261 yes and no, nobody opposed.
That was for the 42% reimbursement promise.
Yeah, so even though that resolution is already highlighted in another part of the resolution, they wanted it to stand out, which is why they wanted to create a new subset of it. It's highlighted more than we're underfunded for special education.
Any other legislative updates?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
As a part of this?
Go ahead.
So, it's hard because obviously we have to wait 2 years for another budget, right? So I just wonder, is there something very concrete and actionable we can be doing in this next 2 years? And maybe you have insight based on who you talked to, or Jim, are there actionable concrete things that they're asking boards to do to advocate now, before, right?
Yeah, one of the things is we could, join the, I call it a lawsuit, but that is what it is. And the cost for that would be $1 per student, from all districts. So that would be pretty, not suggesting we have to do this, but we could all donate a small portion of one of our cases to make that happen. That's all we want. So just a thought, I know we can't really discuss that at a great length, but that is definitely one thing we could do.
I would just add on to that, every year, the state budget can be tinkered with and tweaked. And, so if there's something that passes, they can certainly help to fund some of that or increase the funding and to kind of give and take within the parameters of the state. So that's always possible. The other thing is there's always legislation that could have minimal impact from a fiscal standpoint, but could help us, like my retired annuitants legislation, that if they did that, that's not gonna cost the state anything. So, it's difficult though, because everything is, kind of incorporated in some of the political, infighting. And until we can say we're focused on kids, what's best for kids, and I know somebody else, talked about the huge surplus that we have, and could that be used? I think so, but again, it's just me.
I know there's another thing too, I think that was discussed at the last meeting, I was not available for, and it was putting on like our tax register, like how much money is going towards the voucher schools. I think that would also be helpful, and together with that, just making sure, and even together with what you were talking about before about kind of educating our own public, just to make sure that they know these things. Because if some of us don't know these things, it's highly likely that most of our constituents don't, right? So just trying to have those conversations, and they're not always easy, and they won't be on Facebook, but just person to person, whenever you get a chance.
Good. Board member comments and communications. I believe Rob is gonna talk about the things that we passed. This will take a few minutes.
So this was from the delegate assembly, so last month we discussed how the board wanted me to vote in that assembly. These are the results of what occurred overall. So initially there was a proposed amendment to the WASB bylaws. One district had requested that, WASB, have more than one, membership type. So right now, you're just a member of WASB. Some districts wanted a limited access to WASB so that it cut out the legislative piece. And, so for that, it was, when finding out, so they wanted a full or limited, membership. And somebody had asked the question, how many districts don't renew because they don't want to be part of the legislative piece? And they had stated that in 24-25, only 2 districts didn't rejoin, and in 25-26, 5 districts didn't rejoin. When they had asked about how would it affect dues if there were limited memberships versus full memberships, they said that the advocacy portion of WASB's budget is they spend about $132,000 to $160,000 a year on advocacy, and of the dues for 25-26, that's only 5.7% of their budget. So it's not a very big piece of their budget, but it's still something to consider. So then it had also been discussed that WASB supports 328 resolutions, 71 of those are financial related. So the ending of the vote ended up not being adopted to do that amendment by 241 stated no, and 42 voted yes to do that amendment. So that one failed. Getting to the actual resolutions that we had discussed in our session, the first one was opposing the removal of caps from the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. So that resolution passed. There was no number vote because there was no debate on the floor, so it was just everybody raised in the majority vote, it passed. And that was for the WASB to support maintaining an enrollment cap of 10% for the districts and an income cap of 220% of the federal poverty level on participation in the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. So that one did pass. Second one was revisions to the school district and school report card process. So this one had a few debates on the floor, a few amendments. Only one of the 2 amendments that passed or that were brought forward, only one amendment passed, and that was just deleting one line, letter D, of that proposed resolution. So it ended up passing 183 yes, no was 107, with that one amendment passed. Resolution number 3, amendment to resolution 5.22 funds distribution. That was regarding the state education agency be assigned the jurisdiction to supervise and distribute of all funds intending for educational programs serving youths of elementary and high school age, any school system receiving public funds in Wisconsin. Additionally, WASB supports state educational agency supervision and distribution of all federal education funds if federal funding from the U.S. Department of Education is changed to be federal block grants or other funding sent directly to states from federal agencies. That resolution passed. Resolution 4, amendment to resolution 1.26, authority to schedule referenda. That one was debated quite a bit, and that was essentially the WASB opposes limits on scheduling referenda. Further, the WASB opposes any limitation on the duration, scope, frequency, or effect of school referenda. Some folks wanted to amend it that you could only put referendum questions on on the normal spring nonpartisan or fall partisan elections, to have the referendums at a main election, not a special election. Currently only 2 can happen per year, and the recommendation was to have 2 per election. That amendment failed. The overall amendment about just, WASB doesn't support limiting, the scheduling of referenda. That whole amendment, passed, or that resolution passed. Number 5, the substance abuse disorder and treatment aid. That was in regards to WASB supports legislation to establish a new categorical aid to fund and support school-based substance use disorder prevention and treatment-related services. This aid should be comprehensive in order to fully fund necessary resources and staffing that districts may need. Special provision should be included for small schools to address issues with economies of scale. Use of these funds should be identified and prioritized at the local level. Such uses may include but are not limited to contracting with service providers, employment of specialists or other professionals, training for staff, and other additional resources as needed. That resolution passed 176 to 110 votes. Resolution number 6, vocational transition for students with disabilities. This one was an amending an existing 2.31 funding for children with disabilities. WASB supports the use of the federal, state, and local resources in collaboration manner with Department of Vocational Rehabilitation to support transition programs for students with disabilities to achieve better employment and post-secondary opportunities for these students. The resolution passed 250 to no votes of 26. There. Resolution number 7, universal state covered meals. Resolution was that the WASB supports legislation to establish and fund a universal school meal program to cover the cost of all student meals not covered by federal programs. Reasoning, one person on the debate floor had made a statement that in 2023, $3 million of lunch debt that was not covered by free and reduced funding was picked up by school districts, and that's quite an intense number in Wisconsin. That resolution passed 171 yes, no was 110 votes. Number 8 resolution, Public Education Endowment Fund. This one had a lot of debate on the floor, and this is about the WASB supports legislation that creates a public education endowment fund to be invested on behalf of Wisconsinites to fully and equitably fund public education across the state. So this is funded from usually, the common use of this fund since 1848 when the state was formed is that the sale of government lands fund this. The sales of timber on the state land is what funds this, and also fines and forfeitures. This I had learned in the assembly, but also talked to one of the tables at the vendor fair portion. This fund supports all of your public school libraries. Every year a check is sent to the school districts. I don't have that number at the top of my head, but I know I picked up the piece of paper from the gentleman at that table at the vendor fair, and that endowment fund resolution failed. 90 said yes, 183 said no. Some of the concerns from those who opposed this on the floor was that this fund could potentially cause less funding from the general budget, since they could potentially pull from this and put it to the general funding. And since this is funded through like public and public donations and such like that, if they opened it up as an endowment fund, the districts were concerned that the general funding would get lower because they'll utilize this more, but that's not the purpose. So that one failed. Resolution number 9, amendment to the resolution 3.241 for early childhood education funding and public-private partnerships. This one, the WASB supports state-funded public school 3K and full-day 4K for all Wisconsin children. The WASB also supports collaboration between public schools and other public agencies and programs, private care providers, and Wisconsin institutions of higher learning. WASB further supports the district discretionary use of expanded Title I dollars, earlier grade levels by districts meeting the benchmarks for National School Lunch Program, direct and categorical participation, and 3K and 4K student households meeting income eligibility for NSLP. All publicly funded 3K, 4K schools, including schools receiving voucher funding or funding through public agencies other than DPI, must have the exact same accountability, reporting, and transparency standards and requirements. The WASB opposes a state funding mechanism to provide private child care providers with a per pupil payment for 4K instruction. All 4K programs should be funded through school districts with the local flexibility to contract with private child care providers to provide 4K instruction as determined by the school board. There was an amendment proposed to strike that last paragraph. That failed. That motion failed to strike about it being required to go through the public school district instead of private. 41 voted yes, 230 voted no, but overall, including that paragraph in that resolution, it passed. Resolution number 10, this one was regarding supporting decoupling of public and private school funding. This was regards to the WASB supports legal legislation separating funding for parental choice and independent charter schools from the public school equalization aid formula, and instead supports the state taking full responsibility to fund payments to these schools. The rationale was currently local taxpayers must offset the loss of equalization aid used to pay for a resident pupil's voucher to attend a choice or independent charter school via increased property taxes, even though their locally elected school board has no oversight of these schools. Reassigning responsibility for funding private choice programs and independent charter schools to the state would keep equalization aid focused on public schools, mitigate reductions to equalization aid to schools experiencing declining enrollment, provide stability in funding, and increase transparency by allowing debate of the program in the state conversation. There was a lot of debate on the floor for this one. This resolution overall failed. It was a yes vote of 55 and a no vote of 220. Many of the folks who were not supportive of this one basically stated, go do your research in the states of Florida, Oklahoma, and Arizona, because since they've decoupled, their public schools have been affected poorly with funding. Resolution 11, opposing decoupling of private and public school funding. The WASB opposes legislation separating funding for parental choice and independent charter schools from public school equalization aid formula, and instead supports all publicly funded schools being funded by a combination of state and local dollars. This one passed 153 to 127, and there was not many debate on that one. I think a lot of people were in that unknown what happens, so kind of like we were like, well, if we pass this, we don't know what the next step will be, so give us that step and then we'll make a vote. So I think that's kind of why that one just didn't have much to discuss. Resolution number 12, encouraging schools to participate in the WIAA policy making. This one did not have much discussion and it passed. And that was regarding WASB encourages its member schools to participate and engage in the WIAA policy process when necessary and appropriate. And then the last one that was brought up was a fine arts education. WASB encourages all school districts to develop and implement a comprehensive fine arts curriculum that spans from early childhood through high school, recognizing the vital role the arts play in fostering creativity, critical thinking, cultural awareness, a sense of belonging, and the overall student success. This one was not supported by the Assembly's resolution committee, but at the end of the assembly, they do allow anybody who proposed resolutions that didn't pass to get to the floor, that they could do a kind of like a Hail Mary and present it to the assembly. From what this looked like, many districts didn't want more state requirements when local districts should have this topics control themselves instead of having a state mandate. So this one failed, 26 voted in favor, 235 voted against. So that was it for the delegates that week.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. Moving on to anybody else? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay, it actually kind of builds off of, sorry. It kind of builds off of what Mike, had mentioned, I don't know if we're talking about a little bit. So I just wanted to follow up with the city and the tax bill, you know, we've been taking in a couple of emails from people just asking about that increase, because that is a large number. And I just wanted to see if we've reached out to the city in any way, and maybe like what we want to do, if we want to reach out to the city so that we can plan for next year. So that's kind of part one. So one community member emailed and asked, just basically made a little list of what taxpayers expect. So I want to read that. And then talk a little bit about, you know, strategic communication, obviously more proactive, but obviously we would be reactive at first, but maybe putting a mechanism in place for us as a board to do a little more communication or even just sorting of information for people. So in this community member email, it just says what taxpayers do expect, clear public breakdown of how referendum dollars are being used, cost savings plan tied to school closures and consolidation, a reduction in administrative and operational expenses, and then transparent communication acknowledging the tax burden placed on residents, many of whom cannot continue to afford these increases. And so I just kind of was brainstorming ideas, and obviously we can brainstorm ideas together. But I shared something with everyone right now in open session, which you don't have to read all of right now, but I wanted to do it when we're all here, and not share it with you prior to this moment. So I'm sharing it right now, and then we might need to come back to it. But what I was thinking is, even as I was like sorting through the website, we have a lot of that information that this community member is requesting on our website in various ways. Even as I was gathering it, it was kind of hard to find.
It was hard to find.
Where is the information on the original referendum? Where is the language on it? I dug around. It took a lot of digging around. So what I just kind of like mocked up, we do not have to use this, we can edit. I just was trying to like wrap my head around what this might look like. Is kind of like a Board of Education highlights or some kind of like, you know, summary of what we've been working on as like a quarter. And categorize it. So the first one, referendum and tax updates. Obviously, ideally, this would be proactive and it would go out before people get their tax bill next year. You know, if we have something in place where we can kind of do this work ahead of time, that's ideal. On the left, you see the kind of summary of what we've done. None of it is new to us, but we know what we've been doing, and it's
And
harder.
we know where to find it.
Right.
Well, not all of us, sometimes it was difficult, because you had some problems finding it.
Yeah. And on the right, I think sometimes when we embed links, people don't know they can click on the words and link with the link, you know? I think embedded links don't always work well. So on the right, I made a resources and links, which could be any kind of thing we want to share, you know, whether it's an article or a link to our in-house doc or a link to meeting minutes that we have, you know, we have to share. You know, and then it was like funding AD&E agreement potentially for like talks with South Milwaukee. And then the reconfiguration and 5/8 planning. And then a property update, just a general property update on Parkview, Jones, House. So like this is just a starting point.
But it's more, like, I feel like that's a really good idea. I know that we talked about the tax chart and putting that on and in fact, Mike and I talked to the people in Green Bay that you saw last year. And they were showing us their examples, and I think you went to that session as well afterwards, we accepted to that one.
Okay,
But
yeah, I mean, so it's like twofold. Like, I feel like we need to connect with the city, and maybe we want to talk about who should do that, or just like our next step there for next year. You know, like we are going to be reactive now because that's all we can do in explaining things. And same thing with this. If we planned ahead a little bit and knew, you know, here's information people will need going into summer, we can put that in our spring. I was thinking maybe starting with just, you know, each season, you know, quarterly. This could be a monthly summary if we wanted to go there, but I think maybe we start quarterly with what we can, you know, manage to put together. And obviously this would then be on the website, which, you know, we could push it out to social media as a resource. It's not something that I don't think we're positioned right now to send to every door. But ideally, we would have the money to do that, you know, even twice a year.
Send it to every door.
And like, right now, this isn't fancy, so for everybody who's not seeing this, this is just a Google Doc with kind of compiled summary info and links to what you'd be searching for if you have questions on anything, or if you just wanna get up to speed on what's been going on in the district. You know, Justin and I kind of talked a little bit, as we were listening to a speaker at WASB about, like, what other districts are doing. Verona
Yep.
was one who is like knocking it out of the
They are,
park.
because they've won a lot of different awards for their communication.
Yeah.
Their summary information, we just kind of like perused, you know, how they're sharing information from the board and the work the board is doing to the community, and it was very, very detailed. And they're using things like S'more, what was the other one, Peach?
I had a note on it somewhere, I meant to bring it, but yeah, they had a whole platform where they kept, basically every digital newsletter that they ever sent out was in there, and they drilled down into all of them to
Yeah.
find all the information.
And they're all like paid for, you know, tools.
Right, yeah.
Educational tools that are really great, and again, but paid for. I feel like if we can at least start with what is free to us, you
Start
know.
somewhere.
I will
We have
also
to
say
do
that there is a specific guide that goes out quarterly to all the to all the places in Cudahy that, maybe we can get a page in as well.
Well, and, you know, I think I talked about this with Carrie and Lissa, but, yeah, I mean, right now it seems like we're reactive in a lot of ways, when it comes to communication, like, you know, we're not out on the, Cudahy Wikipedia, as you call it, that's not what
That's my
we're always
favorite phrase.
responding to, but, you know, things come up in the community, we try and put out communications, you know, to share information with everybody, you know, but I think where we can, you know, I'd like to see like a calendar for the year, like we know school scorecards are coming out at this time, let's have a communication ready to go, you know what I mean, to socialize that with the community, as an example. You know, and just kind of do a better job of that, I mean, we know when things are happening, some things are happening throughout the year, you know, so being as proactive as we can, you know, where we can, you know, in a cost-effective way, I think we go a long way.
Yeah, and having a mechanism like allowing us to then like gather that info kind of as you're going into where you're
Right.
gonna put it out
Yep,
there. So,
absolutely.
you know, I don't know how we should proceed with this, because obviously this is rough.
Well, I think we just need to continue having these conversations and, you know, maybe set a target date to launch something like this, you know, I don't know.
So what are the parameters for us as far as, you know, being an open session for sure is when we would need to have these conversations. It's the once a month meeting. To revise something like this and collaborate in a document is breaking open records law, I'm assuming. Right. So we would need to revise it.
We would need to put it as an agenda
Okay.
in open session.
Okay.
So we can most definitely do that if the board is okay proceeding that.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add, it feels like you would be very responsive to the community, because each of you has a different, group that you interact with. You'd be taking all that information in, finding your source documents, and then putting it all in one place, and then sending it out to the community, which is really an effective way to communicate. And it sounds like other boards are doing similar things right now, because social media is very quick. And so you want to have a way to get quick information out, and sometimes being proactive that way is real helpful, and it's right from you, so it sounds like an effective technique.
I just want to point out something that you have mentioned, Mike has mentioned, is the facility. And how some of it's broken up to the voucher schools and stuff. So I attended one of the sessions with last week for that. And there is a way we can get it on taxes. And there's a note box, and you can get it in there. Unfortunately, we have to do a little legwork first. One, we have to get approval from the State Department of Revenue to get that done, and then we work with the city. Green Bay has done this, and once they were able to show the community in Green Bay, here's how much of their money is going towards the culture school. The unfortunate thing that really stinks about that is culture schools have zero accountability to the money that they get. Whereas we have to open it all up. So, if we can get that up, if we can do something and get that going, and work with Brian or Michelle or board, and get that going, then we can try and do something with this number of in front of everybody, so that way, when you get the tax bills at the end of the year, yes, you may say, my tax bill went up 35%, but you'll be able to see broken out what portion is going to, the Cudahy, and what of that portion, what is going to the public school. So I think this would be something really good for us to get going. And have some visibility.
Well, I was just gonna say real quick, I think going back to what Lisa was saying, right in here, we know tax bills are coming. We can break down, Brian did a really good breakdown.
Yeah, he did.
Of everything and, why residents are getting charged more than the referendum dollars, on their tax bills. And how that's a state problem and not, really driven by the local community, or the school district, I should say.
Which, if we do a winter summary
Yeah.
like this,
It
it
could be
will
part of
be
it.
on there,
Yep.
it's just gonna be in February, after our next board meeting, or
Right.
whatever, so it's a little delayed, but at least we've got a starting point.
So I think that what we'll do is bring this on for the agenda for next board meeting. In the meantime, everybody can kind of gather some info so that we can talk about it and exactly what we're gonna put on it and what we want on it. And then everybody brings in their stuff with them.
Do you think it would be more?
Is that a working document?
Well, here's what I was wondering, is it more efficient, and maybe this would also break, we just wanna make sure we're not breaking any rules.
Right.
For individuals to email me, and then I can put it into the document, and we can approve it and revise
Right.
it in the moment, but it might be more efficient for then the links and everything else to be in there. I'm happy to do that work, and that way, we're looking at it kind of in a rough but
Yeah.
final.
I would think that would be really.
We can just all share the topics that we've.
Yes,
already
and
seen.
then the links to the things, because,
Right.
there were things that I was finding them, I thought, well, we need this, but I can't find it, it's not in the G drive, or I have an old copy that I don't have,
Right.
maybe the final copy in my drive, so, yes, the links as well.
Okay, is everybody on
Yeah.
board with that? Sounds good.
Absolutely.
Absolutely wonderful suggestion. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to committee meetings. The Community Sports and Recreation Committee met January 12th. Did you wanna say, go ahead? Well, I was just gonna say, I thought the meeting went very well. I thought we discussed a lot of topics. I mean, I think the meeting could have gone on all night. There was a lot of stuff on there. But, we went through everything from, the community center and how it came about. And then, the sports task force, which by the way is going strong and actually is so involved that we had to add extra dates onto it now. I will tell you, after the last meeting, we talked about coaches' compensation, about an all-school booster club. We had, WIAA updates, including that Nicole Ward is the new, president of the Woodland Conference, so congratulations to her. And we talked about conference realignment. We talked about something that we don't normally talk about, which was actually, really helpful. We talked about facilities. We talked about some improvements, some great donations that we got, from places in the community, and a lot about what our needs are. I am looking out in the audience because I know there's somebody in here that told me, your soccer scoreboard is horrible, and she was right. We do need a lot of things, but we also, what was nice about the meeting was that afterwards, we also discussed, like, how can we get these things that our kids need? How? And what can we do to make some of these things happen? So it wasn't just like a meeting of, complaints and wants. It was a meeting of how can we take action to achieve some of these things. And so I thought it was really good, and it was really good brainstorming, including a policy that we want to take a look at the next policy meeting, and just a lot of people coming together with really good ideas. One suggestion I will say that was shared with me is that and this is for all committee meetings, and maybe not just this one in particular, but when there's gonna be like a slide presentation, maybe we get that earlier, just so that we can look it over, so that there's some questions that we wanna ask, that we have, the opportunity to look some of that stuff over before. But other than that, and then some of like, there was some like figures in there, I wanna say later about the like conferences and stuff, but not knowing, not seeing that information, it was sometimes a little bit hard to just equate some of those things back and forth. So that would be my only suggestion. Other than that, I did get some great feedback from a gentleman that attended. I don't think he intended to stay that late, and then he did, and he really found it really interesting, and he had a lot of good suggestions as well later on. So, I'll let you add on to anything that you want to. Okay.
I mean, I guess the only other thing I would add on, I don't know if you mentioned it, is the booster.
Yes.
So Nicole Ward is really invested in the All Athletic Booster Club. So we talked a little bit about, you know, recruiting parent volunteers and funding and how it might be like divided out. So that was pretty exciting, and you know, I think, Tina, you had all kinds of great stats.
Yes.
On like the health of adults and the like just being a high school athlete, on kids' involvement and what that does for their health, mental health, the longevity of their health. So that was really good to see too. And like I know the committee has top 3 needs. So those top 3 needs were feeder programs. We talked a little bit about this slide, the cohesive buy-in at all levels, and then program and sponsorship. And then you had other.
I think we expanded on that at the last meeting.
Facilities,
just so
yeah.
you know.
Well, good, because I was asking, I asked, like, how do you separate the quality coaching and the facilities?
Well, I will tell you, that is something that we worked on, so you will get a very big report on that coming soon, because we actually, it all comes in a big circle, right, Tina? I mean, like, it all ended up aligning with everything else that we talked about, and we did talk about some solutions as that too as well. All right, thank you. Any other committee meetings? No, okay. We're gonna move on to superintendent's report. That would be you, Michelle. All right. Great.
All right, I am first going to turn the mic right over to Megan Ann, who is here as our student representative this evening. So do you have any updates from our high school?
I know our basketball team is doing very great right now. Our pom and dance team just competed at our regionals, and our pom and dance team competed at regionals, and we got 8th in pom out of 17 or 18, and then we got for jazz we got 12th out of, I believe, 19 teams. I know cheers regionals are coming up for a chance for them to go to state. We had 2 girls from the dance team, Iris and Sophie, who are both seniors, qualified with their solos for state competitions, so they will be going to state the weekend, the second weekend of February, or first weekend. So that's very exciting. We have our musical that we are in preparation for right now, Bring It On. We're doing a lot of work with music and dance. So that'll be February 26th through March 1st, that Thursday through Sunday. And we also are doing a lot of things for student council, so we're trying to create as many fun events as we can so that we can keep the school year going steadily, because it kind of gets in a rough patch during this time of year, because while not everyone can go to prom, we're still trying to make things, we're trying to create things in the school year as while we're making education important. We want to have things that kids can look forward to so that the school year can continue and they can still be.
Wonderful, thank you so much for those updates. Does anyone on the board have any questions for our student rep on the board? All right, thank you. Those are a little more exciting sometimes. And not that we don't all love policy and legal updates, but thank you. We appreciate you being here. One thing that I wanted to share with you that you can take back to the high school students, We currently have sent out a survey out to our staff members. We also want to make sure that we have student voices included in that survey, so you're gonna be seeing that come out to the high school staff. We'll be working with the school principals over the next couple days to get that out to them, so it's gonna be asking things about course selections, courses you'd like to see in the future, kind of building culture, climate, things like that, so we're really excited to hear what the high school staff has to say, so anything you can do to, not that high school students wouldn't take that seriously, but we do really care about what you guys think, so anything you can do to support that would be appreciated. All right, a couple exciting updates for tonight. I wanted to start with, I think Director Jury, you mentioned a print newsletter. It's perfect timing. Amanda and I have been a little frustrated because we've got our district newsletter that is a consortium with St. Francis, and our district would be out in December. We believe it will be hitting mailboxes this week, correct?
Maybe next week?
Maybe next week, we're keeping our fingers crossed. We previewed the final, print copy, and it looks really great. We're able to afford it because it is a consortium between the two districts. So we are going to kind of test market it, see how our community likes it, because one of the things that we're finding out, and I know Amanda and I talk about this often, we like to do things a certain way, but there really is still a large segment of the community that likes something in print. And the way we're doing it is we're selling ads, actually we personally are, we have someone that's doing that for us, so that we can make it affordable, but we're gonna get some, what would you say, some just, informal survey data back from them to see if they like it. And we'll see if it's successful, and then when someone made a joke about, well, maybe we could get a page in there, a clipboard. We'll see if it's successful this time, and if so, we'll try to model that and do that in the future, so we should have some information back, so I'm very excited about that. Second, I'm not sure if we talked about this, yet at a board meeting, but I do know that the board members and the middle school staff are aware of this. With our new, middle school building being a 5-period campus, that's gonna almost double, if not more than double, the number of students that we have on the campus. Justin Beaver, the current principal there, and I have had conversations over the past 6 to 9 months with him, looking at Jenny and Jenna, to really talk about what the best role is for him. He does a great, those of you that have worked with him, he just does such a wonderful job working with students and families. So his role next year is going to be working directly with students and families and more on the discipline side of the building, or of the school. So we did post for a principal to work on the more instruction side of the building. And we already have 28 applicants for that position. And what's quite incredible about that is, almost all the participants or the applicants have, leadership experience. So one of the things, I shouldn't say that that's exciting, because what's disturbing about that, if you think about all the things you're talking about right now, districts don't have any money, districts are closing schools. That means you really have valuable people that are having to make those decisions in January to non-renew contracts because of a reduction in force. And so you have some really valuable people that are available, in positions like we have available. So we're looking for a really great partner, to work with Justin for our new middle school next year. So we were just thrilled, I know Ali's smiling right now, we were really thrilled to look at the candidates that were applying. So we have that process in place. We're going to have a whole process. We like to do some internal screening in district office where we have staff send videos to us so that we can kind of do a screening ahead of time. And then we will have the staff of the middle school involved in several more steps. So we'll get more information coming out in the future. So we're very excited about that. And then also, in terms of our continuous improvement planning, Jenna and I have been meeting monthly with all of the school principals to review their continuous improvement planning. They share the good, the bad, and the ugly with us each month. Most of it is really great news. And there's some struggles, as you know, we work with real human beings. So at times there are some struggles with kids, and they do really a great job in asking for some support and how we can provide some additional supports or resources so that they can really meet the goals of the continuous improvement plans. One thing that we're going to do in February and March, we're going to have half the team come and present at each of those board meetings, because they're going to have their mid-year assessment data so that they can really share how things are going. So that should be exciting. As you know, we weren't able to do that in 2 shifts in September and October. They all came in October. That was a late night. So we'll do that in 2 different meetings. So that should be helpful. And they'll have that assessment data, so you can really ask some great questions around what they're seeing and do some analyzing with them so that we can do the appropriate courses of action when we're looking at different curriculums or we're looking at different supports and we're putting a new staffing plan in front of you. So I'm really excited about that work. And then we will be discussing the South Shore Recreation collaborative update tonight. I just want to, and I will caution the board is correct. Normally we have closed sessions at the end of the meeting. We've been working with Jenna Rousseau, who is our attorney. This closed session is perched right in the middle of the action items because the board needs to make an intentional decision whether or not to go in closed session. That is why the agenda is written this way. You may choose not to go into closed session at all. Carrie will walk you through that process tonight. So that's up to the board, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and that's why the order looks a little strange tonight. So any questions on any of the things that I shared? All right, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on then to December financial reports. Brian?
I just realized that I have the wrong one. So I just, a little bit ago, I realized I have the wrong link, on that agenda item. I must have copied and pasted, too quickly, and, unfortunately, what was linked is the least interesting part of the report.
I'm glad you said it, Brian.
There was a narrative that I had written, and now nobody gets to see it, and so all my hard work is going to waste. But let me just pull it up here real quick. I just had it up and then I closed it. I lost that one too. Anyway, essentially, there wasn't a whole lot of change from the December to January report. The first of the tax levy payments have come in. That was just over $7 million. And so then between now and April, we'll get the majority of that. And then I think there'll be one last payment in July for that. We're looking at, I'm working on a revised budget that I'll present next month. I'm looking at the special ed aid portion. I was at a conference last month with Baird on their budget reporting model, and they believe that this year's aid is going to be roughly around 37.5%. I budgeted 35, so that extra 1.5 is about $150,000 additional revenue that I hadn't planned on. So I think based on that recommendation, I will be upping that item in the budget. And then also looking at the staffing budget, updating that. We've had a lot of turnover this year that Ally can probably address in more detail. But we've had a lot of turnover in our part-time staff, in particular the aides and custodians. And so that is a challenge to keep track of budgetarily wise. But other than that, things are going well. The audit is still in process. The 24-25 fiscal audit is currently in management review at the audit firm. And that can take a few weeks. It can take up to another month, depending on how many questions that review process generates within the firm by the upper management. Then the 24-25 single audit is just beginning, and that one started late this year because of late guidance from the federal Department of Education on major programs and what testing should be done there. So I would look to have an audit report from the audit firm sometime within the month, possibly into March. And again, it's all going to depend on the next level of review and how many questions that generates by the upper management at the firm.
One thing I wanted to add about the audit, because I know the board has been asking some questions about that. One thing we've been noticing when talking with colleagues in other districts, this seems to be a trend, not just in Cudahy, where people have been getting their audits back later and later. So I don't know if there's a shortage in the industry, or there aren't, what would you say, CPAs available. I know they use a lot of interns to do some of the, would you say, legwork on the audits, but lots of districts are experiencing some lag time in getting their audit work back. And so I don't want, I was gonna say, I don't want you to be frustrated. I know you do get frustrated about this, but other districts are seeing these same trends also. So I just want that to be on your radar.
Yeah, last time, we went, we did a RFP for audit services 23-24, I think it was. And at the end for the 24-25 school year, fiscal year. And we sent out the RFP to probably a dozen or so, audit firms, and we only got 3 back. A lot of audit firms now are pulling out of the school district, sector of business. And so the remaining audit firms that are still working on school districts are finding themselves overwhelmed. And so they're having a tough time catching up in terms of hiring staff. So that's a big part of it there as well.
How often do we go out to RFP for auditors?
So I've got that one, the current one is a 3-year agreement. And so at the end of probably a year from now, I'll do a new RFP for the next 3 years. Generally, best practice is to at least do an RFP every 3 years. There are some districts that would go so far as to require a new audit firm every 3 years. That may be getting tricky right now with the market out there. But at the very least, we're gonna go out to RFP every 3 years.
Do we always switch when we go out to RFP, or?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Like I said, there are some boards in Wisconsin that require a different audit firm every 3 years. And at least a 3-year period in between the same audit period. That's generally the gold standard in terms of internal controls and fraud control. But that can be difficult right now with the lack of firms in the market.
Anybody else? No. Okay, we'll move on then. Redefining strategic priorities, shaping our future together.
All right, thank you.
Oh, you never.
All right, thank you. This month, I want to give a few updates on the Transition Planning Committee, the Instructional Planning Committee, the Building Disposition Committee, and our Communications Committee. If you note, you also in your folder that Amanda put together for you, you have the communication that went out to the staff to remind the board of the cadence. Prior to each board meeting, we do send out an update to the staff so that they are on track in understanding what we're working about each month. This month with the Transition Planning Committee, we're focused on the logistical and administrative work for the upcoming consolidation with the key updates relevant to the staff. Tomorrow, we are having our 4th planning meeting for working through staff assignments. I know the staff are, I guess I would use the word anxious. Everybody wants to know where they're going to be next year. Our target date regarding the implementation timeline is to have that work completed by March. We are hoping to get done a little bit sooner on that. In terms of the coordination of moving and logistics, principals are working on a classroom furniture audit in collaboration with Matt Billmeyer, so that will help in managing the moving process. And unfortunately, the District Culture and Branding Committee meeting, which was already rescheduled from December, had to be rescheduled again due to Mother Nature. We now have a meeting scheduled for February 5th. Those meetings are going to run every 2 weeks. I did share with you the draft of the overview of the process. I'm going to send that out to the committee for their review, and then I jokingly said to Amanda, with just a little homework so that they can do some work ahead of time. So I'm really excited to get that work started, and it's just unfortunate that we've had to push that out a little bit.
Then moving down to the instructional planning committee, they've been actively working on the core structure for 5-8. In January, they've really been working through, a building space review and also, focusing in on scheduling. So that's one of the things that's really interesting and fun work to wrap your head around what the new schedule will look like, in the 5-8 building. The work's advancing through subcommittees right now, which met during the month, and I believe you're having another meeting at the end of this month, correct? Then in terms of the building disposition committee, I want to thank the board for the meeting of the electors before the meeting today. So that was really helpful for us so that we can make sure we get the details of the lease finalized and we can make sure that J.D. Jones is ready for lease for that July 1st occupancy. We also want to make sure that the board is aware that the expiration date is arriving for Parkview soon. And so if you remember, we do have the broker in line to take over remarketing that should that lease, should that deal expire. So we're ready to go with that. Also in terms of the district office relocation, we have some dates there for you. We're doing abatement from January 13th through February 3rd, and then selectmen will begin on the 4th. General construction is slated February through May. And then finally, the communications committee, we finalized the tools to use with the community. We worked through putting together the toolkit for the principals, and we are going to begin with our first listening session this week, next Wednesday night, so we're really excited for that. One of the things I want to start providing the board, and I just brought this sheet here, is one of our planning documents. I have some of the pink things highlighted, and then I put a sheet here. With any good project management plan, there's always check-ins to make sure that we're on schedule. What I have in the first column is the phase or the task. You'll notice I put 5 things here, the targeted completion date and then the actual completion date. I have this highlighted in yellow. You'll see every area has been either completed ahead of time or on target. So currently, right now, with most projects, we are ahead of our scheduled timeline. All the other projects on this timeline, I love that you have yours circled, and most of the next completion dates are not until the end of March, so that would be kind of our next scheduled check-in point. So we're very happy to say that we are ahead of schedule. I have to, looking at the entire leadership team, we are ahead of schedule because of them and the principals. They have been working really, really hard to get some of this work done, and it is a heavy lift, some of these things. So I appreciate all of you and all the work that you've been doing. So any questions on that? No, great, thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business action items. Approval of the 2026-2027 instructional calendar.
We don't have much to discuss about this, except I want to bring up something very important. There is a slight shift in time for the elementary school and the middle school. Janet, can I ask you to just read those times? I don't have it right in front of me, and it was to make sure that the buildings run smoothly with the new schedules.
Yes, so our proposed, the high school times will stay the same from 7:40 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. The middle school time would shift 5 minutes, starting at 7:45 a.m. ending at 3:10 p.m., which is the same ending time. And the elementary recommendation is 8 a.m. as a start time and ending at 3 p.m.
Any questions about the shift in time? That was to accommodate the new schedules.
So right now at the middle school, I know they open doors at a certain time, kids can come have breakfast. Sorry. Right now at the middle school, I know kids can come early and have breakfast before that start time. I'm just thinking about parents dropping off both middle and high school. That's like a 5-minute start time difference, so that's really hard. What is it, like doors open at what time?
That was gonna be what I said too, except that I remember the high school opens fairly early, like 7:15, so.
Well, and with 5 through 8, with younger children, at the middle school, that means more people need to be there, obviously, to monitor those kids in the cafeteria, which is where I think they are kind of congregated right now when they're able to come in at 7:30. In middle school, 15 minutes of like unattended time for 5th through 8th graders is like a, not great, you know what I mean? I'm sure you thought about this, I'm just wondering like what the timing might be like for.
So we still have opening doors at 7:30, but the things that you're talking about, like how breakfast would look like, where kids are going, that, all that stuff is still being figured out in the planning, but the goal, we can't have all students first off that don't necessarily come at that time, but we wouldn't have all 5th through 8th grade students go into the cafeteria, for example. We have to have designated spots for them. And then we would have staff, specific staff that staff those times purposefully. So we're working through all those things, but definitely on the radar, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome,
yeah.
thank you.
Rhonda?
A motion to approve the 2026-2027 instructional calendar.
Motion made by Rhonda Ricchio, seconded by Chris Galuski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Let's move on to the approval of the special education transportation with St. Francis.
This is just an agreement between the two districts to transport, one student, that is, that's a St. Francis student, and, basically they live near to one of our roads, existing roads.
Nobody can hear you.
So this is an agreement between, St. Francis and the, I'll get this right one of these days. This is an agreement between St. Francis and us to transport one of their students who lives very near one of our existing roads, to their high school. And so they contacted us about just kind of piggybacking off this road. And so this agreement basically, it's a 660301 agreement, and it basically outlines what that's going to look like, and we would serve as the fiscal agent, and then there would be a prorated reimbursement from St. Francis to Cudahy.
Question, what grade level is this individual?
I do not know. Is it high school? High school students.
Thank you.
I would like to move,
Push the button down, Jim.
okay, there we go.
There you go.
I would like to move to approve the intergovernmental cooperative agreement with the St. Francis School District to provide transportation services for its students.
Second. Motion made by Jim Propala, seconded by Michael Johnson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to approval of the 2026-2027 open enrollment seats.
Yes, we went ahead to look at our open enrollment seats. Some of the considerations we took into for general education is we looked at the current class sizes that will be moving over, and along the lines of Cudahy moving over to Lincoln, Jones moving over to GM of the students. And then what we did was just overall grade level enrollment. We took a look at each grade and what seats could be filled, what seats we would have open without adding an additional section. And that's how we achieved our numbers. So in general ed overall, we had 124 seats open. That's grades K4 through 12. K4, we have 5 open seats. K5, 8 open seats. First grade, 3 open seats. Second grade, 6 open seats. Third grade, 5 open seats. Fourth grade, 12 open seats. Fifth grade, 20 open seats. 6th grade and 7th grade, or actually 6th through 11th were all 10 seats available. 12th grade has 5 seats available. And then for special education, we looked at a combination of both our current workloads and our current caseloads. All of our teachers are taxed and all of our services. CISA 1 had put together a document about area schools. Our caseloads were really at the top end of all of those, along with our services. So we will have no open seats for special education next year.
What class sizes do we use to calculate that?
We used, our recommended, these are the ones that were passed by the board last year. Hang on, so I don't misspeak. I am going to pull it up. It was for K4, our optimal ratio is 24 to 1. We actually really go by 22 there. K5 through 6th grade is 25 to 1. And then 7th and 8th grade, 26 to 1, 9 through 12 is 26 to 1.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion. To approve regular education open enrollment students for the 2026-2027 school year, up to the maximum recommended open enrollment space determination per grade level as indicated on the 2026-2027 enrollment projection data chart.
Second. Motion, oh,
Yes, we used to do that. I didn't know if this was a more efficient way. I'm just going off this motion.
do you have it?
I do.
Here. Oh,
Be easier off of that, yeah.
Chris is good.
These tiny Chromebooks are not.
Just over, yep, go ahead.
Right. So I'm going to amend the motion, not the emotion.
You could just read them, you could just add them.
We have K4, 5 total seats, 0 for all special ed cross-categorical seats. K5, 8 seats total. First grade, 3 seats total. Second grade, 6 seats total. Third grade, 5 seats total. Fourth grade, 12 seats total. Fifth grade, 20 seats total. 6th through 11 are 10 total seats each grade level. 12th grade is 5 total seats for a total number of seats of 124.
Okay, motion was made by Mike Johnson, seconded by Alyssa Skoglund. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Make a motion to approve 0 open enrollment students requiring cross-categorical special education services for the 2026-2027 school year.
Second. Motion made by Mike Johnson, seconded by Alyssa Skoglund. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 0 open enrollment students requiring speech and language services for the 2026-2027 school year.
Motion made by Mike Johnson, seconded by Alyssa Skoglund. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Donations.
I'd like to make a motion to accept a donation of $100 to the high school powerlifting team by Steve Kaminsky, with grateful appreciation.
Motion made by Mike Johnson, seconded by Alyssa Skoglund. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to South Shore Community Recreation Center Facilities Study. I think we have a guest this evening here. Okay.
So we have representatives from E-Way and C.G. Schmidt with us tonight. I'd like to just give you kind of a background at the wider here. Just to kind of give you an overview of what's been going on with the proposal for the South Shore Community Recreation Center. Back in September, we first started kicking this idea around with the South Milwaukee School District. And the owner at that time was interested in selling the building, but he came to us and said he'd like to sell the building to us before anything else, before he put it on the market. So we spoke with South Milwaukee, and we were both interested in a cooperative kind of a program. So in October, we put together a preliminary agreement to purchase the building, and in that preliminary agreement, there were several different milestones that we had to meet in order for us to go through with the sale. And then, in December, we approved an intergovernmental agreement with, the school district of Milwaukee, South Milwaukee, for a cost sharing agreement. And then, in December, South Milwaukee, since they were gonna be the ones issuing the debt, we're gonna hold a meeting of the electors to approve the debt. So we were working within a short time frame, and because of that, we had kind of multiple things going on at the same time that, probably normally would happen over the course of a year. So we had some of these steps overlapping with each other. So what happened, basically is, there were several, points that we needed to put, that we needed to meet. There was an appraisal, that we were working on, analysis, of the facilities, a title commitment, environmental testing, zoning, both approvals from both boards, electric, authorizations from both, electorates, and then, an overall financing plan. So, some of those, we're not gonna get to, because of, probably tonight's, outcome of the facilities, assessment report. And this was probably the main thing that we were all, waiting for and looking on. And so, basically, what EUA and CB Schmidt did, EUA came in and did the on-site analysis of the building, and they looked at it in detail, both the outside, inside, the guts of the building, the HVAC, the pool, and they put together a fairly comprehensive report. Itemized, they had a 5-point assessment scale for each of the different areas within the building. And in short, basically, overall, while there were some things that we knew needed to be done, we knew that there was a lot of interior finishing work that needed to be done, floors. We knew it needed a new parking lot. But overall, there was several things, once they started looking into it, that on the surface looked okay. Down under, it didn't come out so well. Overall, the building is in poor condition, from their assessment, and, most items in their report, were rated either a 1, which on that scale was critical, needed to be done, or probably should be done immediately. 4, was 2, anything rated with 2 was, considered 4. And 3 was fair, 4 was good, and 5 was new. Almost the vast majority of the items were rated 1 and 2. There were a couple of 4s and 5s in there that where the previous where the owner had done some replacement of some equipment. The pool is not as in good condition as it looked like. Although it was running clear, it looked, and it's being currently used, and the actual interior of the pool was in relatively decent shape. The mechanical concerns with the filtration pumps and the piping are likely going to need at least $500,000 just there to repair. So anyway, that is a brief summary. So the total cost for getting the facility to functional use would just be $8.3 million in the first year. Some of that could probably be pushed off into the second and third year of ownership. But overall, the building needs about $13 million in repairs alone. So you can think of that as $13 million in deferred revenue, of which almost $8 million would need to be upfronted in that first year to get us up and running as a rec center. And so last week, South Milwaukee had a board meeting where they went over this, and basically the costs involved are beyond both districts' ability and beyond their ability to seek funding for, borrowing authority for. So with that, I'll turn it over to EUA and CB Schmidt if there's anything you want to add, or if you've got questions for any of them.
Great job.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it would be great if you could give, I know when, we have two of our board members who attended the South Milwaukee meeting when you presented there, so it would be great, I know we, if you could just give us a real high level, professional opinion on what you discovered. Because I know, as Deidre, the South Milwaukee superintendent, mentioned, often this was a preliminary study. And I think many people in the community were just, nobody wanted their taxes raised, so we understand that. However, many people in the community were disappointed because everyone on the South Shore was very excited about a collaborative process. However, we had all hoped that the building would have been in much better shape. So if you could just share some information with the board about some of the things that you discovered, that would be appreciated.
Sure, yeah, I can do that. So my name is McLean Schramm, I'm project manager with UA. UA was hired to do the facility assessment. So we had a handful of experts visit the site. So we analyzed the site, the building, exterior, the envelope, the roof, the interior spaces architecturally for accessibility, for some code-related items, mechanical systems, electrical systems, plumbing, fire protection, and pool. So fully comprehensive. As Brian mentioned, the way that we assess buildings is a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being new, 1 being poor. Since this is an existing building, so the original building was built in the 70s, there's an addition in the 90s. A nice baseline to think about is a 3 is what we would say is a fair condition, and that's what you would expect to see when you walk into a building of that age. So if things are maintained and maintained well, the average of the building, you would expect a 3, right? So if things are gonna be replaced, those are gonna be new, maybe some things are older, those are gonna be less, but that's kind of the baseline. So as an average of the whole facility, we came in at a rating of 2.11. So below that 3 mark, right? So it's in that poor condition. And if you look through the report, we assess a lot of categories, like I mentioned, but there are many items under each category, and they all have their own ranking, and then those get averaged. So there are some 5s and 4s that have been systems or elements that have been replaced. There are a lot of 2s and 1s, which is bringing that score way down. Some of the bigger categories I'll mention is roofing was a big concern. The roofing has clear evidence of water infiltration. That needs to be repaired. And when water comes into a building, it starts damaging the stuff inside the building. So we saw a lot of that evidence as well. As far as mechanical systems, that was another big ticket item that we saw. And a lot of those items really come down to the life expectancy. So we assess not only the conditions of the elements and materials and systems, we also look at the expected lifespan of different systems and elements. So a lot of the mechanical systems were just at, near, or past their expected lifespan. So that's what you can see there. And then the last thing, I think I'll say, and then you can ask any questions, is we had a 3-part, so the first, or 3-part report. The first part was the condition assessment. The second part was EWA's recommendations with the priority of when they should be done. So a lot of critical items are being recommended to be done within the first year. Then there's items that we recommend within 3 years, and then 5 years. And all those items have a cost associated that C.G. Schmidt helped us put together. And then the third report is that pool assessment. So when it comes to aquatics, that's very specialized room and system. So we brought in an expert from WTI who did the assessment of the pool systems, and that full report from them, their recommendations and the costs are all from WTI.
Yeah, my name is Ryan Schmidt with C.G. Schmidt. So let's expand a little bit on the budgets. There's some big numbers here, but I want to just kind of explain how we went about putting these together and what we included. Typically, when we put together a total project budget for a project like this, we have both construction costs and then soft costs. Soft costs would include owner contingencies, furniture, and equipment that go in the space. Any of the monitors and technology, usually gets classified as soft costs. So there are soft costs included in these, as well as risk reserves, or as we call contingencies. And we have about 15% contingencies between the construction cost and the owner contingency. So just like if you're remodeling a bathroom in your house, when you take a wall and open it up, there's likely going to be something you find behind that wall that needs to be addressed. So we try to account for that up front, but that's built into these numbers as well. So all the work that was happening in 2026, we accounted for inflation. So that's 2% to get you to the summer of 26. And then for each subsequent year, we add 4% per year to account for the inflation, because work we do 3 years from now, obviously is going to cost more than it does today. So they're big numbers. There's a little bit of sticker shock, but wanted to let you know that this process that we went through accounted for everything that it would take to furnish this building as well. If you're redoing a building and you need the equipment with tables and furniture, there's going to be a cost associated with that, so that's accounted for on that owner soft cost side.
Any specific questions? So just a couple questions. When it comes to the facility condition, in your opinion, is it even worth, if anyone were to do the repairs on that, would there be a return on investment that if you spent the 13 million or 8 million in the first year or whatever, that the value would then increase up to that point, or exceed it? In other words, is it worth even repairing, or is it better to just demo and start new? If this was gonna go forward in the future at some point.
We did just a rough kind of square foot analysis of a building of this size, and if you were to demo it, I think just the cost to build a new building that's that size was in the $25 million range. So it would probably be more expensive to demo and build new than make this sort of investment in it.
I know it will cost more, is it worth it compared to repairing, Band-Aid versus surgery?
Any other questions?
So, of all the contingencies, what's the other contingency could be there that we haven't talked about, that we haven't heard in this report?
There is a disclaimer. It's one thing I didn't talk about, but at the time that we did our walkthroughs, and I think even as of today, there's no abatement test samples of which materials within the building have asbestos. I don't know if that's what you were referring to. So there is a disclaimer that asbestos abatement is not included in the figures that we provided. So there could potentially be additional costs for abatement once a consultant gets in there, tests the samples of flooring material and ceilings and mechanical insulation. All are pretty prevalent in buildings of this vintage to have the presence of asbestos in them.
Yeah. What about the mold that could potentially be in the walls because of the leaking roof?
Yeah, and that would kind of fall under that same kind of scope as asbestos when you're dealing with hazardous mold. It typically would need to be abated to some degree. So we kind of fall in that.
So you would just have to rip off the drywalling and re-drywall the whole building.
Yeah, and there was in the interior of this, I believe 25% of the walls were going to be re-drywalled due to some of the damage we saw in walls being opened up at the time of our sidewalks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Let me say this, when an idea is brought forward It's our responsibility as elected officials to do our due diligence. That means putting in the work to determine whether an idea truly addresses a need in our community and whether it can be done responsibly. We cannot make informed decisions without information, and we cannot obtain that information without following the proper channels. The preliminary purchase agreement was not a final decision, nor was it a commitment to spend taxpayer dollars. It was just a necessary step to allow us to explore the idea fully, gather accurate information, and determine whether it was even viable. Without that agreement, we would not have even been able to access the details needed to make an informed judgment. We absolutely value community input, and we have heard it clearly. However, we cannot make decisions based on speculation, misinformation, or social media chatter. Our obligation is to base decisions on facts, data, and a clear understanding of the impacts, both short and long term. What we have heard very clearly is that the taxpayers are at their limit and do not want additional taxes. We take that very seriously. At the same time, we recognize that there's a real community need for programming and services that serve all the people of Cudahy. Balancing those two realities is not easy, but it's necessary. At a recent Common Council meeting, someone said, actually it was you, Skip, that we need to make do with what we have or less until we're on the right track. I agree with that sentiment. And I believe that by exploring this option, we have actually opened the door to some new possibilities. Specifically, conversations about shared services or collaborative programming between districts that do not involve purchasing a building or increasing the tax burden to our community. That ultimately is the value of doing our due diligence. Even when an option may not move forward, the process can lead us to better and more responsible solutions. With that said, I want to be respectful of both the process, the board, and the community's time. If any board member feels there's a need to go into a closed session to discuss this matter further, that option is available to you all. However, if there is no new information to be offered, no additional clarification needed, and no legal or strategic reason to continue this discussion in closed session, then I believe we can move forward as a board and proceed to a vote. Okay. Then we will move on to the next agenda item. Thank you to both EAU and CG Schmidt for coming and presenting tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
EUA, sorry, EUA.
Yeah, thank you for coming and sharing the information with the board. We appreciate you. A couple notes for the board. First of all, you do not need formal board action to end the preliminary agreement. I think a couple things that President Durr pointed out to the board. This was a preliminary investigation. There was never an offer to purchase a property. And if could I just say a couple things?
Go right ahead.
Before we vote on this. I think one of the things that's really interesting to me, and one of my mentors has always said to me, as leaders, we're always working on or thinking about what is the problem or the project or the exploration, what are we trying to solve here? And that was something that we were really all working on here. And it's something that I keep pointing at our student rep. That's really something that we're trying to teach our students too, that we're remaining curious about the exploration project while we're going through it. And it feels like lately in education over the last 5 to 6 years, things have gotten so heated that we can't have those exploration conversations together. And I really want to thank the board for being open-minded about this. I have heard from South Milwaukee that we were such partners with them in exploring this, and also with St. Francis and looking at opportunities, because we were trying to solve problems along the South Shore of having opportunities for our residents and for our communities to have access to rec and community services during the school day. And so I thank you for exploring this, but having those conversations in respectful ways, because we're gonna move forward and continue to try to solve those problems together. So thank you for being open to those things. Moving forward, Our attorneys have advised us that would be appropriate for you in open session to take action on, ending the preliminary agreement. That does expire today, and that would show good faith to the community.
I'll make a motion to end the preliminary agreement with South Milwaukee School District on this property on College Avenue.
Second. You're all set.
Okay, motion made by Rhonda Ricchio, we'll say second by Chris Galuski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now we will move on to public comments. Amanda, anybody signed up there?
We have one, Cindy Urbanek.
I didn't know there was a sign up.
I didn't either.
We didn't, can we?
Okay, well, you're still welcome to sign up. Good evening. Please, Cindy, I know, you know the rules, but so name, just for everybody else, when you come up, you'll have 5 minutes to speak. Please state your name and your address. Thank you.
All right, Cindy Urbanek, 5658 Southwest Avenue. I have a couple of issues and concerns, but I'm really happy the part that I did hear about the state education convention was the communication, and then the follow-up conversation about a newsletter and getting word out, because I was planning on coming to the board meeting, put it on my calendar for 6 o'clock. I was at home eating dinner, watching the news with my kids and my family, and I happened to go on Facebook, not the legitimate Facebook, but the Facebook where I get my news in Cudahy, and I see that there's a meeting at 5:30 about Jones. So I went to the school district Facebook page, and sure enough, 6 hours ago, it was posted. 6 hours ago. So then I went to the school district website and looked in the buried agenda items, and there it was posted last week that there was a meeting about Jones for today. But in no other communication was there a meeting about Jones. Why didn't the families, the residents within that boundary that have been paying, sending their kids to that school, why did we not get written notification? In the city of Milwaukee, when there are property changes, everyone within 200 feet of that property get written notification. Now, my house might be beyond 200 feet, but I'm still within that elementary school boundary. And I know there's a lot of neighbors there too that probably didn't know there was anything tonight. Regardless, when I came in, there was also talk about the state education convention, which I think would be valuable for the public to know what you guys are doing, how the money is being spent. So I just think the communication has to be better. I agree that exploration is fundamental. I totally agree with that. But I also agree in using the resources within the community that don't cost money, of people that might have knowledge of certain things, and using those resources first beyond expending money and resources and time to explore something that a lot of us already knew was a dead end. I think, you know, I'm happy to hear the vote tonight, because I was going to get up and complain. But I think if you look at all the time and energy in making videos, talking about the financial analysis, all that study time and money could have been redirected towards education. Amanda could have been posting more about our education successes and making videos about that. We could have talked more about the referendum dollars instead of where we're going to pull the money and how we're working with South Milwaukee on this. I agree that collaboration is phenomenal, but that all can be happening without expending thousands of dollars. So, I think, here's what you need to do. I think you need to have some transparency with the community now about how much time and money, and I mean real dollars, was spent on lawyers, on the experts that came in from EUA and CG Schmidt, and be transparent about those costs. And then you will start gaining back the trust of the community to move forward with other things that are education focused, like the merger, the bringing the middle school up, the 5th and 6th graders up to middle school, like the schedule changes. You have to rebuild that trust. That's what Dr. Garden came into our district touting. We lost trust. You've been spending time rebuilding it. You've lost it again. I know there's a contingent in the community that wants a community center. Great. Now we have a conversation going with South Milwaukee and St. Francis. Hand that conversation over to our city officials and the private sector to solve the problem. Focus on education first, and everything else will follow. I can tell you there are other entities interested in that property. Whether they're in as much financial strains as we are, that's up to them to decide if it's worth it. But I don't think this was an opportunity for us to jump in and put our hat in the ring. And now you have lost how much time, and you need to build back that trust, especially going into the future of this district. Thank you.
Thomas Mason? Margaret, sorry, I couldn't.
Thomas Martin, 3735 Pulaski. I don't have kids. This is my first ever school board meeting. You made claims of public accountability and transparency. I saw those meetings, so I showed up 30 minutes early to see what it was about. It was first afternoon on this. It was first released this afternoon on the school's Facebook webpage. Shame on you all.
Skip?
First of all, I don't think I've ever been quoted before. That's something new. But,
Skip, can you please state your name and address?
Skip Shady, 2636 East Eaton Lane. I kind of agree with the lady that spoke first. I'm glad you guys really did your due diligence in doing it. It does take time and effort, and money and everything else. I do believe you are getting the trust back with the people of Cudahy, because there's been a lot lost in our officials in Cudahy, to say the least. We are demanding that we know where our money is being spent. We have that right. It's our money. Your newsletter or whatever else you want to put out on all the things that you're spending the referendum money on. Let us know what's going on, where you're at with that. I know it's going to be positive things. There's no doubt about it. But we want to know what it is. We don't have to wait a year or two down the road. If you're spending money somewhere in the schools, let us know what you're spending money on going forward, so we have that idea. Because if you wait until a tax bill comes, let me tell you, people look at that tax bill and all they said is, oh crap. That's what they said. Because all they saw was that big number there. And beyond that, they said way too much taxes in the city of Cudahy right now. Because I don't think, even myself, it was higher than what we expected. For whatever reasons, it was higher than what we expected. So I'm just asking, please, communication is absolutely paramount for the citizens of Cudahy. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else in that room?
Last one, Tom Schmidt.
Hi, I'm Schmidt, 3954 East Birchwood. A few of you people I see at the city hall meetings, I think I missed 20 and 55 years, because I moved from the city south of here, and when I got married, I moved to Cudahy. This is my second school board meeting since I've been living in Cudahy. The first one was in '94, and I couldn't figure out why I was only paying $28 a year for my daughter's education when I just got done paying $2,000 a year at St. Adelbert's in South Milwaukee. I congratulate all you people. You know, you're not elected officials. If you are, for doing what you did, you listened to the constituents. I'm sure your computers or phones or whatever were going off. The problem I had with this, if it would have passed, is I didn't know we were going to come up with $31,412.77 because we would have lost that on, this would have been an educational institution, and we would have lost that. The second thing is, there's only 7 more meetings. I was at the meeting in South Milwaukee last week with our legislators. There's only 7 more meetings prior to them going out of session for another year. And out of the 242 school districts in Wisconsin, they are pretty sure that 240 are gonna have a referendum, and we're gonna have one, I don't know. But, getting back to that, I appreciate what you did. I don't think we're sitting on 13.1 million, even with our neighbors next door to help out. And young lady down there, that's with the school, when I did go to South Milwaukee, there were a lot of families, well, I was one of 8, but there was a lot of families that couldn't afford dresses, or getting back to prom. And they would wear like a nice dress, and the guys, it was a school ordinance, or whatever you wanna call it, we could wear a sport coat or a suit and tie. We were not allowed to wear a tux because of the families couldn't afford it. So, as of now, I have nothing else. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Okay, I will accept a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Jim Papala, we'll get Justin from Cudahy, seconded by Justin Nash. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.